Hello, everybody. Welcome to this next episode of the X Podcast. It's really amazing to have you with us today. However you're tuning in, if you're listening, if you're watching, if you're running or mowing, I don't know, whatever you're doing, we're so glad that you're here with us today. And it's a special episode.
Aren't they all
really
special?
Episode.
They are.
This one's really special.
The most special.
The most special.
Most
First of all,
specialist ever.
Russ lost his voice.
Yes.
So that's special.
Sorry.
But what's also special is our guest.
Come on.
Yeah.
We got Joel.
Yes.
Joel Leggett here.
Yes. An honor.
All the way from ATL.
Come on.
Or as Pastor Tim likes to say, Hotlanta.
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 Yes. But I think it's just as hot here. But
It is very hot.
It is just
It is
about-
very hot.
yeah.
That's why I'm keeping my arms pinned to my body.
Yes. Sweat
That's
stains?
what you do.
What do you?
I feel like a teenage boy. That's what I
Wow.
feel
can we
like.
see?
Huh?
What's going on?
No. All right,
Okay.
moving on. So, this is going to be a really great episode.
Yeah.
Joel came to our church. As you know, we're all pastors at X Church if you're listening from outside of our context. And he came and just like tore the house down yesterday with an incredible message. So we're thankful
Thank you.
for that.
Thank you.
And we're going to talk a little bit about yesterday and all the craziness that happened on
Yeah.
Sunday
Wow.
at church. It's probably one of the crazier Sundays I've been a part of
It was pretty crazy.
in my lifetime here. And I also want to talk about Joel. Joel started a church how long ago?
Roughly 4.5 months ago.
4.5 months ago.
January 24th was our launch date.
Wow.
So like pandemic still happening, and
the
you
middle
decided
of-
to launch a church.
That's
Yep.
a great idea.
Yeah. I did something.
We're going to talk about all the unique things that come along with that, and just what it's like to start something new
Yeah.
in a volatile season. Talk a little bit about your background, and just give our listeners a little bit of a history. So,
Love it.
so Joel's kind of our connection through Russ,
Mhm.
and so why don't you kind of give us a little? I know you can't really talk at all. But
Yeah, I'll keep it brief. So I was a student pastor. I pastored, led a group of middle and high school students in Atlanta for 5 years. And I'd say once a quarter, I'd go to, people would ask you to come to these little networking connection, meet other youth pastors. And to be honest, I didn't resonate with a lot of the ones I met. But I met Joel and was just like, okay, I like this guy. Like this could be a friend. And we just built a friendship.
Yep.
And I would have him come speak at my church, and he would have me come speak at his church. And really, we've just kept a friendship over the last 5 or 6 years. And I just fell in love with Joel's spirit, and super gifted, but just has been an awesome friend.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Man, that was a lot of nice things about me.
Yeah.
I
That was all
received
that
all
there
of them.
is, but I'm just kidding.
Yeah.
So you guys stay connected, and you kind of had like a. I want to know your journey after you guys had met, because
Okay.
you worked at different churches. Or,
I did.
Tell us about just maybe the last couple of years. And how you
Yeah,
ended
so
up starting a church.
I guess the biggest, many of them were highlights, but most of you know a little church in Oklahoma called Life Church.
I've
Yeah,
never heard of them.
yeah, no, most people know Life Church by the Bible app.
Yeah.
And
YouVersion.
Yeah, YouVersion.
Yeah.
For those
YouVersion.
listening, largest church in America.
Yeah, over
That's what they
30
say. Yeah, that's what they say.
Over 30 locations.
Over definitely, I think it was
36.
31 when I was there, and they've grown to about like 36 now.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah, so that was like the really big catalyst, I would say, for just all things leadership, systems, and just really learning how to just manage.
After you met me.
Russ had a lot to do with it. But I was in student ministry for about 6 years up until that point. I met him when I was working at a church in Woodstock, Georgia. And then from Woodstock, Georgia, we moved to Austin, Texas. I was at a ARC church there. I was thriving. I was doing amazing things. Had an opportunity to go to Life Church. They found me on YouTube. The recruiter watched me preach. And at the movies, message on Cool Runnings.
Oh,
Come
cool
on.
Runnings,
Yeah,
the
and
Jamaican
the
bobsled
Jamaican bobsled team.
team.
Come on, somebody.
Oh, yeah.
And
Message on Cool
in Life
That's
Church,
so funny.
in Life Church is they create it at the movies
Yeah,
so that they can
yeah.
draw attendance through the summer. So that probably just resonated with them huge.
Yeah.
And I thought it was a scam.
Yeah.
When they sent me an email, because I was like,
Yeah.
man, because there's other churches called Life Church.
It was
There's
too good
a
to not
lot.
be.
Love
But this
Life
was like
churches.
Life Dot Church is what they refer to, like the real one as Life
Yeah.
Dot Church.
Yeah.
And he called me, gave me a screen call, and it was like I think a lot of organizations probably could use this screen call because it was really cool. So like just for all the leaders listening, they said, "What if you had the bases loaded?" what song would they play in the stadium when you came out? I was like, this is a church question? I was like, I was like, Bring 'Em Out by T.I.
Yeah.
Come on, somebody. I was like, yeah, bring 'em out. And he was like, fantastic. He was like, because it could be a Christian song.
He was waiting to see if you were going to say Matt Redman.
Or Hillsong, Young and Free, or
Hillsong,
Kirk
Free,
Franklin,
or
Do You Want a Revolution, or
David
Stompers.
Crowder, and it was going to be like, we're done.
Bye. Yeah. And he was like, the second thing, he was like, if you can pick any actor to play your life, what would it be? And I was like, Macaulay Culkin, dude. I loved the Home Alones when I was a kid. I was like, come on, I love it. He's mischievous. Like, his parents had a lot of money. I was like, I love it. I love his life. Kevin McAllister, like, you just get lost intentionally and go in other cities.
You mean like kid version Macaulay Culkin?
Yeah.
Not the adult version.
Yeah. All the listeners, kid version of Macaulay Culkin. So I went through those screening calls, and then they did another one and went through several rounds of interviews. And Life Church, it's almost like American Idol for pastors. A lot of people don't know this. So they eliminate you throughout your week there.
Yeah.
So multiple couples.
Bringing a lot of at the same time.
Yep. And then you just start noticing that people just start leaving throughout the week, and it just dwindles down to like nobody. So I always say maybe, I'm not even exaggerating, maybe we came in there maybe 20, 30 couples, and it was like 6 of us left. Yep. And so they just put you through the ringer.
Well, they tell you it's more likely to win the lottery.
And they tell you it's more likely to win the lottery than it is to get a job at Life Church, which I guess I get now. There's thousands of pastors, maybe millions of us. Yeah. There's 31 locations at the time, so that's 31 youth pastors, 31 campus pastors. Yeah. So your odds are pretty slim.
Yeah.
So went from there and then moved back to Augusta, Georgia. And then
how long were you there?
Augusta, Georgia?
No. How long were you at Life Church?
7 months.
7 months.
Yes.
Wow.
7 months.
They fired you after 7 months.
They fired me after 7 months. No. My wife and I.
Huh?
Yeah. My wife and I just adopted a brand new baby, and you know how it is. All of my moms out there may be listening. She really wanted to be back closer to family.
Yeah.
And just being a devoted husband to my wife, who have given up so much for me in ministry. I was like, I'll gladly give this up for you, but when money's tight, like I told Pastor Tim. Remember, we left a nice situation, like they say in Georgia, situation.
Yeah, situation.
Yeah, so from Augusta then back to Atlanta, where I'm from, or the South.
Yeah.
And we planted a church there through the Ark. Shout out to Chris Hodges.
Yeah. So
describe
a little bit of what the Ark is for people who don't know.
Yep. So it's Association of Related Churches. Chris Hodges, I think some people might know him in the business world a little bit, but maybe not because his relationship with John Maxwell and and different things like that. But he started a organization with his friends to help plant churches. So he's like, well, I'm going to be the first one. And if this doesn't work, can I go work at y'all's church if I fail? Yeah. So he got with his other pastor friends like, hey, I'm going to sell everything I got, and could you basically just support me? And his father-in-law helped was like the catalyst to lead it all. I think his name was I forgot his dad. His father-in-law wrote a book.
You talking about Rizzo?
No, not Dino Rizzo. His dad wrote a book. I can't remember his name.
Joel. He just passed away, I think.
Yes.
Yeah.
His
Stockstill.
No. His but anyways, his father-in-law helped him do it. So then, and they set a goal out to plant a certain amount of churches. I think we might be like church 900 something.
Wow. 900.
Yeah, and they're gonna. I think they're gonna stop eventually.
Really? Mm-hmm. They're gonna stop planting new churches. We don't need them, huh?
Yeah, we do need them, but I think they're gonna stop. I don't think it's an unlimited amount of churches they're gonna keep planting.
Really?
I could be completely wrong on that, but it takes a lot of resources to do what they do.
Yeah.
So I'm like, if you plant 1 million of them, that's a lot of.
Yeah, but how many of them are still alive? Are most of them?
I think so, and I also don't know if you can be an ARC family member, and you can be an ARC church plant. So an ARC family member, you just use a resource of training.
Yeah.
You're like a distant cousin.
Yeah.
And I'm like their son.
Gotcha.
Right.
Yeah.
I gotcha.
Yeah. So you leave have a lot of different ministry expressions that you've been a part of. Then you get one of probably, maybe it's weird for people to hear this in terms like this, but you get a really great ministry job as far as security, as far as, pay.
YES.
I mean, just a really great situation. I mean, that Life Church is, I I think they're the number one place to work
in Oklahoma.
Yeah.
Russ said that
They made the list
they're somewhere on a
nationally.
list for like place to
Yeah.
work like in
One of-
general.
I mean,
Yeah.
the pastor of Life Church runs the Global Leadership Institute, or right?
Yeah.
Global
Yes.
Leadership
Yeah.
The summit.
Yeah,
Yeah.
so
GLS.
he's the chairman of it. You know, so like this is a really great ministry
Yeah.
job. You leave
Yes.
it, you come back home because family situation, and then you feel like God speaks to you to kind of plant a church,
Yep.
which is just a really unique situation. I think people from the outside looking in kind of looks a little crazy because
Yeah.
you have to raise all the funding.
Yep.
You got to it's entrepreneurial in a sense,
Mm-hmm.
you know what I mean? So just describe maybe what that process is like from birth of a vision and a dream.
Yep.
And like the steps that you had to walk out, like, okay, I want to do this, and I feel like this is what God wants me to do.
Mm-hmm.
Now what?
Yeah, so ARC has prerequisites when you want to plant a church. So you have to have 45 members on your launch team.
Did you always want to plant with ARC?
Always.
Yeah.
Since 2015, I knew that I wanted to, if I was going to plant a church, I was going to plant it through the ARC. We went to at the Inside Elevation, and they had an ARC booth there. And when I was a youth pastor, my wife and I were just like, man, you have a dream to plant a church. You're like, yeah, we do. yes, we do. We got a like a booklet from them,
Yeah.
and we looked over. We're like, this is so cool. One day.
So you've been marinating on that.
For years. We had the name for it for our church back in 2015. Everything.
Yeah.
Like had all the vision and stuff like that. So you have prerequisites that you have to go through to be able to be a church planner. Finances, the debt income ratio, have 45 people on your launch team, and have a certain amount of money raised. So ARC matches up to $50,000 of what you raise. You raise $50K, they give you $50K.
Wow.
So it takes a lot of money.
They loan you.
Yeah, they loan you $50K. Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. All my church planners are. Yeah.
Yes, they loan you.
Yeah, they loan you $50K and they support you for 6 months financially to make sure you meet your budget after you launch.
Yeah.
So obviously in COVID, that was not sexy at all.
Why did you decide to start this during COVID? Can you explain that?
I felt like it was just our time. It was our time. The season was odd, like you said, volatile season. But it was just our time. We just and I wanted to not do it. Let's just be honest. Like I didn't want to do it because of COVID. But my wife just had a very open and honest, transparent conversation with me on our back patio when I was a youth pastor, and she was like, "No, we have to do it now." But she was like, "Because I don't want to get any older, and I don't want to do it when we're older." She's like, let's just, while we're young and dumb, let's just do it now.
Yeah.
And she was like, and if we fail, well, at least we can be in our rocking chairs and say, hey, you know what, man, God did something for 6 months
Wow.
Right.
or a year.
Right.
But we're good now. So
Live without regret is
exactly.
what you're saying.
Yep.
But the decision, you guys had, just to set the stage for that, you guys had been involved in another church in Georgia. So you left Life Church, Oklahoma. You came back to Georgia, got involved in another church, serving there.
Yep.
And so for you to start this church, did you have to leave your place of employment?
Yes.
That's why I want to.
Yeah. So a lot of youth pastors have I don't want to say a rainbow road or a Candyland, but compared to my story, they had a rainbow road and Candyland. I didn't necessarily have that. My pastor, that church, they signed off so that I could be a part of the ARC, because you have to have a pastor who believes in you, God has a calling on your life, and they can support you, because somebody has to back you for the money if you fail. So they did do that. They blessed
Someone's
us.
co-signing.
Somebody's co-signing. That's right. You cannot be a church planner with the ARC without having a co-signer. And that church has to show a strong financial record as well. So you can't go get like your grandma's church around the corner and say, hey.
So it's definitely like you're going to buy a car and you're 18 years old, and they're like, your parents are going to have to sign for this because they will have to pay if you don't make it.
Yep. They'll have to pay if you don't make it.
Really?
Yep.
So if the church plant fails, whoever co-signs, their organization is responsible to pay
Responsible.
back.
Correct.
Wow.
They're responsible for it.
There you go.
Yeah. Now, there are some church planners out there who don't need ARC's money at all.
Right.
So they get all the systems, they get all the resources of ARC, but they came from, whatever, like Lakewood, and Pastor Joel gave them $1 million, and they don't have to have it. There's some church planners out there who
Wait, you mean there are people who have $1 million to start a church?
they actually have a guy.
Didn't know that exists.
Yeah, it's
Nice.
They have, it's a pastor out of Nashville. The ARC shows him in your training. He raised $1 million.
Wow.
Raised $1 million. His name's Pastor J.D. Ost.
That's impressive.
How much money does it take to start a church? You don't mind me asking. 'Cause that's probably people.
Well. So it depends on at what level you're gonna start.
Yeah.
We penny pinched.
Yeah.
We didn't even have subs because we didn't have enough money to buy them, because they're another $5,000. We launched with $35,000.
Yeah.
$35,000, and we were blessed because the the place that we meet allowed us to store our stuff on site. So we did not have to buy a trailer because the trailer was $7,000.
Yeah.
And ARC allowed us to cut corners because of COVID.
Yeah.
So normally they don't allow you to plant a church without a mailer.
Yeah.
So we were able to plant without a mailer. So we were able to cut a lot of corners, but 35,000 was, I mean, that's a shoestring.
Yeah.
I mean, our AVL was 15 grand. You know, that's 60-inch TVs.
Right.
We don't have rear projectors or whatever you call them. So nothing
Not
out
like
of
LEDs,
fancy.
nothing fancy. We got them on post.
Yeah.
And you know, we got in-ear monitors and stuff like that. But 35,000 that's pennies for planning a church. You probably need. I had to call another church planner in San Francisco, Jason Laird, and shout out to him. And his launch budget was like $350,000.
Wow.
Yep. Wow. So $35,000 in comparison to him. Like, I mean, you know.
Wow.
So you need, if I could say to a church planner, you to launch strong and excellent and well, and you really kill the game, you need $500,000.
Jeez, I think the value in I've always thought this way about you, Pastor Tim, is a really unique kind of balance that you guys do as lead pastors when you're pastoring a church and when you're starting something new. And because I think the perception is you sit around, you pray, and you it's a super spiritual, intimate thing with God where he just delivers manna from heaven. And maybe that does happen in the way
maybe that one pastor that got $1 million, but
like, there's this really huge organizational leadership calling that you guys have to fulfill as well. Like there is, I mean, it's not cheap to rent out spaces. It's not cheap to present to large crowds, to crowds at all. It's not cheap to hire staff. It's not cheap to send out mailers and to promote a church. Like these things cost lots of money. And so you have kind of this stigma in the world of churches doing certain things with money. And then the very real, the very present reality of it takes a lot of money to do this. And so how do you manage that tension? Maybe both of you could speak to that.
I'll let you go first. I'll let the goat go first.
My experience was I can't really speak to that because we did not have a lot of money. I don't think we had $35,000. So you know, to start the way you say start a church, I understand that's today. That's the mindset. You want to start big and strong,
right?
Where the hopeful idea is, you know, you're launching and there's hundreds of people coming and boom, you're a church day one of whatever. That didn't exist. We didn't have an organization. ARC didn't exist. We had 3 families that, with the blessing of the church we were currently in, allowed us to put our tithes in a savings account to save to plant.
Oh, nice.
So that's what we did, and so there was no mailer. We put an ad out in one newspaper. That's a whole lot cheaper than a mailer.
How much did it cost you?
It don't reach probably a couple $100. It also don't reach. Didn't reach hardly anybody.
Were a thing.
Right.
Yeah, exactly. And so I would say we didn't even have that much. You know, there is a lot that you have to do. I think, you know, speaking to the organizational leadership that you have to have, the things you have to do. You have to do everything. You have to do everything. You're responsible for everything. Set up, tear down. Well, ours was different because we had a space. We found in the terrible location, but we had an opportunity to rent a space that I think was about 3,000 square feet.
Wow.
It was just an open warehouse, and we had to build it out. So all the money that we had in the account went to construction materials, and we didn't hire anybody.
Wow.
It was 4 of us, 3 family members, and another person that we went there on Saturdays, and we went there on evenings, and we built the space out.
And you're working other jobs.
Wow. Oh yeah, we're working.
Oh yeah, we didn't even get into that yet.
So we literally built out. It was literally a big open, just aluminum box frame shell, and we had to go build the bathrooms, and we had to go build a wall to separate from the back kids' room to the stage wall. We had to, we did it all. There was 4 of us. Wow. So, you know, we used hammer and nails. That's what we did to build our first location.
Wow. How much did you launch with?
How much?
Because you said your tithing was going to a savings account. How much did you have in there?
Oh, I doubt there was probably more than $20,000 that we had when we started.
Okay.
And doing that, and so again, in the situation I'm in now, I wouldn't want to launch like that. I go back and go, man, I would never want to launch like that. But I'm just grateful for the grace of God, and that we are where we are now.
Yeah.
And you learn a lot. So I learned a lot by what we did, but we didn't have. I'm thankful today that there's organizations who provide a way for someone like yourself to be able to start a church and to do it well. That took me years. I mean, I worked full time in another job for the first 4 years.
Wow.
That I pastored that church. Jeez. So I worked full time and I pastored that church plant. So that's. But when you don't have an organization supporting you, and you don't have a launch. I mean, we had a launch team. I think I had like 12 people.
Wow.
And
12.
Mom and Dad.
Yeah. My wife's parents and
In-law.
her grandparents came. That was nice, and her aunt came, and one other couple and us. And so I think everybody has a little bit different journey, but it does take it takes a lot of guts. I commend you. I know what it's like. I've been in your shoes.
Yeah.
It takes a lot of guts. It takes risk. And you had different kind of risk because you stepped away from your job before you started it. I stepped away from my job after we started it.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And so that's a different kind of risk. And so maybe you can even speak to that and his question as well, and what that looked like for you organizationally to start it.
Yeah. So I don't, in your ARC application, they ask you, are you going to plant part-time or are you going to be a full-time? But most church planners that I talk to have gone and done it well. They don't do it bivocationally.
It's hard.
It's very.
I don't recommend.
I couldn't imagine it.
I don't recommend.
Like I couldn't imagine it. So
I was also in school full-time the first year that we started it.
That's insane.
I did all 3.
Wow.
That was stupid.
Superhuman.
That was stupid.
Yeah.
All I did was, my schedule was crazy.
Oh, had to be.
Work in the day, come home in the evening, had school Monday night, all night Monday night, did stuff in the church stuff for the evening. Saturday, prepared message all day. Saturday, Sunday would preach, and then Sunday afternoon all day and evening did schoolwork. And then Monday went back to work, and then went back to school Monday night. And luckily I was in an adult degree program, so it was only one night a week where you had 4 hours straight, and the rest you had to write and do on your own. So I did that for like a year, first year, and I just look back and go, okay, but God gave me a grace, because that'll kill you.
Oh, that'll kill you.
It will kill you.
Yeah.
But God,
and that's what I've heard.
God gave me a grace to survive it. I'm telling you.
Yeah, it'll kill you. And that's what most church planners who try to do it bivocationally fail.
Yeah.
And I remember my old executive pastor, he said, when my job was doing good, the church was doing bad.
Yeah.
And then when church was doing good, my job was doing bad.
Yeah.
And he said, but when the church is doing good, my family would be doing well.
Yeah.
So he said, whatever you can do not try to do both at the same time. You just don't have time to network. You don't have time to, to take random trips to Montana that I was invited on with these other, big time pastors who can pour into you and you can learn, and then you get other connection and stuff like that. Because, all of it's relationship heavy in your pre-launch phase. Yeah. And that was the darkest season for me, because you couldn't go to Chick-fil-A and build a launch team. Because of COVID. It was shut down.
You couldn't gather a group.
I couldn't go to Starbucks and just like hang out with people and buy $5 Starbucks gift cards and hand them out and say, hey, come hop on a Zoom and hear about vision for me and my wife on Sunday. Like all of the way that we had to recruit people, what we did is we had virtual launch parties, and if you sign up for a virtual launch party, we send $25 DoorDash gift card for you and your spouse.
So you bribe people to
we did
to get
we
into
did we did. So we sent them a door. So they ordered food on us, and then they hopped on a Zoom call, her vision from us.
Wow.
And that was we were able.
You were able to build a team.
We were able.
How many people?
That we launched with.
Yeah.
We have 45 people.
Okay.
We have 45 people that we launched with, but I mean that dwindled quickly to like 26 or 29. Like after like week 2 or so.
So they were with you till they weren't.
They're with you till exactly. They say you lose everybody within 6 months, in church planning world. So far that's been happening. But
has it been true with you what they say that the first person that says I'll be there till the end is the first person to leave?
We have not seen that person yet.
Yeah.
We've struggled mainly with worship musicians.
Yeah.
Were you saying they're flaky or what?
No. Our worship director, he and I served in youth ministry together. He's very strong and,
Yeah.
and bought into our house, he and his wife. But our contract musicians,
Yeah.
they were very in and out. Because they showed up, got a check, and just kind of, they weren't really bought into the vision.
Yeah.
Versus those who are, they're really just hardcore about it. But building a launch team was not fun. Our very first launch party that we had, we had it at a coffee shop. And the owner told us, or the manager told us, that the gathering amount was like 12 people. Might have been 6, but I feel like it was 12. Guess how many people we had? Had 3 people show up to the first one.
There you
3
go.
people who came are still very heavily involved in our church
That's
today.
cool.
They are rock stars in our church. And I had 3 people. I went home, definitely wanted to quit, super discouraged. My wife, she's so full of faith. That's her gift. And she's like, babe, man, you poured into those 3 people. Like, you
Yeah.
poured, you loved them well. And she's like,
Yeah.
it's gonna be good. And I was like, no, it's not. And then the next one, 30 people came. And then after that, it got so big where we had to rent out 3 rooms in that coffee shop in order
Wow.
to sustain it all.
awesome.
That's cool.
So just God, just beyond our faithfulness.
Can we talk
and-
about relationships? I think that's maybe I want us to kind of circle back on when you start something new. Even in the business world, they say, what is it? 9 out of every 10 startup fails. Okay?
Yeah.
And so you kind of alluded to that.
Yep.
Is that there's so many churches that start church plants that
fail? Yeah, I think 1 out of every 3 or something.
1 out of every 3.
Something crazy. Yeah.
I heard it was about 80% of church plants fail within the first 5 years.
Right.
Yep.
I got a couple
Yeah.
pastors tell me all these stats, so I don't know. What
Yeah,
to
I don't believe half of it.
I'm just kidding.
Yeah, I got
But-
it from Barner Group, I think.
Yeah, I think that the point that we're trying to make is it's extremely difficult to start anything
No.
from scratch. And my observation in the church world is that it's really hard to deal with the relational loss, from all of just the newness and the vision, and that you need people, and there's seasonal relationships, and there's all of those things. And so you kind of, has it equipped you to start something new? How many times you've kind of replanted yourself in different houses, in different churches across the country? How has that equipped you as far as relationally to go, okay, let's start something new, and how has it affected the lens that you look at these new relationships through?
Yeah. I mean, they just show you that you have to value people and relationships over everything else. Because we always say at Core Church, we value who you are, not what you do. Because that just transcends and it carries for a long time. I learned that from Craig.
Yeah.
It's just like, no, we love who you are, not what you do. So when people know that you love them, because we tell people, like, if you never come and play another instrument in his house again, we love who you are, and we're available to you.
Yeah.
That just goes a long way. So, I heard a leader, his name's Paul Scanlon. He does a lot of stuff in the business world. He said, if you grow big people, they'll grow big things.
Yeah. I'm trying to get him on the podcast.
He's phenomenal.
the guy.
I went to his communication masterclass. He's legit.
Yeah.
Um,
Put in a
so
good
Can
word
you
for
put
me.
in a good word? There you go.
yeah, I sent him a message.
Yeah.
So that was super important for us to know that starting something new, that what I've learned from those different expressions of houses, that relationships were most important when starting something new.
Yeah.
Because also, think about this: like in a startup, I have a product I'm selling you.
Right.
Kickstarter, we need $1 million. I'm going to give you a cool phone.
Yeah.
You're going to get this pre-launch package. In the church world, I'm like, wait,
Yeah.
God, tell me we're going to have this cool church. Okay. It's going to be called Core Church. People won't come to it. Man, it's going to be awesome. Like, it's going to be diverse and generosity. Man, it's a posture, and man, it's going to be cool. Like, heaven is our goal. Come on. Like, it's going to be good. But you want us to give you want $150,000, but we're not even, there's nothing, there's no
Yeah.
tangible item.
There's no product. You're asking people to invest in something that doesn't exist. A vision.
A vision.
dream.
And that was the hardest thing about this game, because there is nothing. There is nothing.
Right.
So I tell people what it's gonna be like. The church, this is the church we see. Over it, this is the church we see, man. It's gonna mean your kids are gonna come here. Their kids are gonna come. It's gonna be good. Like, and they're like, okay. And then when I would tell business, because to be honest with you, I thought that a lot of my money would come from business leaders. Didn't get a drop of money from them. Pastors,
You know why? Business leaders invest in something that has ROI.
yes.
Business leaders, they have a different mindset.
Yes, yeah,
They do.
Yeah,
They
because they're like, just
invest
start it in your house.
Mhm.
You just start it in your house, and then
Yeah.
you go out there and do it. But other pastors do. Oh, microphones are expensive, buildings are expensive, so they got it. So I stopped trying to tap into that business world well, and I started meeting with pastors.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I was like, and they got it, and that's how I was able to gain financial momentum,
Wow.
building relationships and talking to other pastors who went before me. Yeah,
What's it like asking for money?
it's terrible. especially because I was in COVID. People were scrambling for money.
Yeah.
Or if you weren't scrambling,
Savings.
you didn't know where your next check was going to come from or what the next year would look like. So it was terrible.
Yeah.
It was absolutely terrible. People just said, I'll get back to you. And I'll let you know something. I'll get back to you. And we had a lot of promises that never came in. I probably would have had $150,000 of all of the promises I could have cashed in on them. I just
Yeah.
never, because I had a lot of pastors say, we're going to get a check from us. We're going to do this. We're going to do that. And it just didn't happen. And a lot of youth pastors that are going into church planting world or whatever ministry role they're serving in, they get to go and preach in other houses,
Right.
and get a lot of money. Churches were shut down; they're online only.
Yeah.
So I couldn't go preach nowhere. I couldn't do anything. So
Yeah.
all of my outlets, the typical church planting strategy,
Right.
it was out. It was out.
Right.
It was out of the window
Right.
for
The
me.
new
And
game.
it was a new game, and I absolutely I hated it.
Yeah.
I hated it.
Yeah. Well, tell me from your perspective, because obviously different season, but the principles are still the same.
Yeah.
You've led this church for what? 18 years.
Wow.
18 years, and we're still walking by faith. The building we're sitting in right now. I mean, it's still a step of faith.
Yeah.
It's different.
Yeah.
So just tell me, reflect back on Joel's phase and what it's like to operate an organization like this.
From a relational standpoint.
Well, let's talk about relationships. I know we're kind of talking about a couple of things. Let's talk about relationships. Let's talk about the courage it takes to I don't know how to say this. This is going to come out right, but you understand what I'm saying. To ask for money.
Yeah.
To fundraise.
Yeah.
To campaign.
So we had an internal core group that we didn't really have to ask for money until we tried to move out of that facility. I was already full time to move into what was Lithopolis campus, and we had a group at that time. So it had taken us 4 years, and we were running probably around 100 maybe with kids, and had expanded a few times in there, but we had the ability to do that. It was those things were minor. This next step was we were going to buy a facility that cost $750,000, and we had to raise $125,000.
Wow.
And when you have a group that probably has 60 to 70 regular adults that are already giving to help meet, they're giving because they believe in giving, they believe in the church, and they're giving, and that's helping meet your budget, that's paying your salary, that's paying all those things. And then you have to stare down, hey, we need to raise another $125,000, otherwise we don't get this loan, and the contract falls through.
Wow.
And so, I look back on that right now, and I still am like, I have no idea how in the
that's
world
exactly
we did
how
it,
it feels.
'cause it's like, I can't even understand how in the world we did it, but we did. It was different. It was scrappy. I had to do a campaign. You had to invite people to give. That was the first of many that I've done, and I think it's hard when you're a younger leader too. It's hard. You feel so uncomfortable doing it because people are giving up money that they worked hard for, and you're asking them to believe in a vision of a building that you hope is going to translate into seeing the vision of the church expand. And there's a fear in the back of your mind that I'm going to ask all these people to give this money, and then it's not going to work.
Yep.
It's going to fail.
Yep.
And so it's just an immense amount of stress, and I think a little different situation is you didn't have time in your situation before you launched to build relational equity with people you were asking to buy in.
Right.
I had time as I was their pastor for a while.
And their son. I'm just kidding.
We had more than one person there, but and to build relational equity. So my inviting them into the vision to do it, I'm leveraging relational equity that you didn't have.
Right.
So that's different in that regard. But to go back to just even the impact, because you also asked, I think, about the relational, the impact of relationship and loss. I remember in the middle of this huge step of faith where we had a contract for a building that we weren't sure if we could raise the money for it. We weren't sure how we were going to afford the monthly mortgage. We weren't sure any of that stuff.
Yeah.
In the middle of that, as we're doing the campaign, and it was, if I recall, it was in May. We had already started our campaign, and we did everything. I mean,
Is that for this building or for the
no, that was for Lithopolis.
Okay.
And we did everything like crazy stuff that
You
was.
played like 100.
I played
100 holes of golf in a row.
84 holes of golf. I did a golf-a-thon because I was like, I'm
What?
not.
I've golfed with
because
you.
I'm like
84
You are
holes?
Mr.
I was like,
consistent, man.
I was like, I'm not running.
He hits
people,
the ball low and straight.
People doing marathon.
Could you feel your
Can't-
back after that?
No,
Putting's not great.
but
Putting's not great.
I literally,
But the
I
drives,
was,
man,
well,
low and straight.
I said, what can I do
Low and straight.
where I can raise money?
Consistent.
I don't want to walk and I don't want to run. I said, I'm going to try golf. And so I've tried to get people at work. I tried to get people at church. I said, hey, new people. I like, hey, would you sponsor me per hole? And I had one person that did
Mistake.
I had one person did like $5 a hole. Like, what's he going to play? 20 some holes, 30. I went and started early in the morning when the sun came up, and I had a golf course that let me, and I had my own golf cart by myself, and I had someone else that was with me the whole time,
Goodness.
and I played 84 holes straight from
Would
the
you do it
morning
again?
to the end. No. It was so exhausting. It was not fun what people think.
84 I haven't
paid
played
80
84 holes of golf in my life.
18 is
yeah,
it's terrible.
exhausting.
Yeah.
I did 84 holes. We did things. So we did like all this crazy stuff on top of a campaign to say, would you
Bake
give
sales.
bake sale, anything you can imagine. We had gold.
Wow.
We asked people like, hey, do you have any gold jewelry that you're not using? And we found places that will let you turn in gold, and you.
But
get
you know they
money
call
for
that
it.
a legacy fund now in churches.
Is that what they do?
Yeah, because you get boats, property, land, and gold and stuff. They call it
Okay.
a legacy. They just made it sound.
Yeah,
nice
it was
now.
more like, hey, here's some earrings that I've now wear. Okay, that'll get us $1.
I'ma
You
start
know what
that.
I mean? I mean, it didn't amount to much, but we did all that collectively. It was the effort, and speaking of the relationships, I remember in the month of May we had to have all the money by the time we went to closing, which was the end of May of 2008, and so we had done the campaign already, I think in April or something, into May, and in the middle of that, one of our core members. That launched. There was 3 families of ours that launched, who was kind of our CFO. He was on the elder team, the board. Him and his wife came to us and said, hey, we're going to leave the church. And they said, we're going to finish the month of May until we do this, but then we're going to leave the church. And, these are people that we actually spent 2 years before we even launched dreaming, meeting at our house every single week, planning, dreaming of the church and all this stuff. And so, when you go back to the relational impact, when you start something new, especially in this kind of arena, there are people who are with you until they're not, and you can never really, I think, be prepared for it. It just impacts you in ways that you can't imagine.
Yeah.
There's
There's a book on it. Yeah.
And I would say we've, and then as our church kind of moved on there and it grew. That's why there are probably just a handful of people that are still in our church today, like the Hughes that I talked about just recently, that were there the first weekend. And there's probably a handful or so of people that I don't know, maybe there's 10, 15 from those early days that are still with us. Yeah. Most people, when they like your vision and they like you, when it's small, it gets bigger, and it's not the same, and they move on, and that's okay. It's just hard. You never get used to it. So there's a lot when it comes to the relationship. This business, and I think it's any business, because, even in the business world, they say it's not what you know, it's who you know.
Right.
And that's how you get ahead in business, too.
Yes.
And so I think you put yourself out there so much relationally, and as a leader, your influence is based on your relationship with people. And then when they walk away from you, it hurts, it stings. You got to pick up and you got to move on. You have to continue invest in other people. And I don't have to say sometimes it's not founded. I mean, I've made a lot of leadership mistakes. I've made some mistakes I go back on and go, man, that was pretty stupid. I probably would have left too. So, I mean, it's not always on them. I don't want to paint the picture that, pastors are always in the right and everybody isn't, but it's still hard no matter what, even when it changes. So
Yeah. There's a church planting book. It's called It's Not Personal.
How not to plant a church.
Right, exactly. How not to. It's called It's Not Personal.
Don't plant a church.
And they scribble out the not, but it's personal.
Yeah.
In that book, I forgot the pastor's name. He's got a multi-site in Atlanta. He wrote the book, and it was it helped me to realize, and Chris Hodges says that too, the president, one of the guys who started ARC. He's like, just don't hold so tight to people in the beginning.
Yeah.
He said, just because he said it'll break your heart.
Yeah.
He said,
But
"No,
it's
just-
hard because when you're in those initial stages, it feels different. It's different when you have 150, 200 people, 300 people versus when you have 15 or when you have 40
I'll
or
feel
40.
I'll feel it where I am.
Because you're in the trenches and you're swinging a hammer and nails together and you're sweeping the place and you're vacuuming together and you're there late at night painting and
Right.
you build bonds with people when you're in the trenches.
Right.
It's just different.
And did you have a lot of people who already knew Jesus coming to church? You had a lot of saved people.
Yeah, I think initially we definitely
And
did.
see, that's a big struggle for me. Like our church, we have a lot of people who are either unchurched or de-churched.
De-churched,
Yeah. So it's a totally different dynamic with relationships because that's all you got. It's like you want me to give 10% of my earnings, go above and beyond that because we're going to be moving. So you mean to tell me like that I need to tuck that cord under there because it looks bad? I know you said 7:30, but what's the deal? Just I can come at 8:30. Like, so just getting them to
Why would I
understand.
listen to you?
Right. Is that, no, you serving Jesus when you come here. No, like you serve, like, so that whole, you know what
Yeah,
I'm saying? Like
yeah.
that. So the relational game
Like a
for
foreign
us.
concept.
And honestly, I thought I was pretty churchy going to be in church, but apparently I'm not churchy at all. And I don't attract churchy.
Probably your tattoos.
Gotta be. Yeah, it gotta be. Yeah, it must. My wife and I, we thought we were pretty churchy, but apparently we are not churchy at all.
Well, I want to wrap this conversation up. We'll do a part 2 because I want to talk about yesterday. I want to talk about Sunday and
Okay.
the
Yeah.
kind of all the series of crazy events as the morning unfolded. But I like kind of camping on this idea of starting something new, taking risks.
Yeah.
What it's like to lead organizationally from a launch perspective.
Yeah.
And also how to hold relationships, because it's we sell a certain bill of goods. You know, when it, even what you preached on yesterday, Acts 4:32.
Yep.
something like that. The whole idea of the church selling everything they had to take care of everybody's needs. There's a certain unity in a certain relationship, a certain picture of relationships that we sell in the church, and we believe wholeheartly in that. But at the same time, understanding the seasonal nature of every relationship, even before we moved into this building, that we only have probably 40% of retention on staff from before we started this project.
Wow.
So God was moving people on, and there's new people that came onto the team like Russ and like a whole bunch of people that we have on staff, but there's some people that are forever people and some people that are seasonal people. And to my big journey, and maybe we can just land on this, is how do I go, how do I not harbor bitterness in my heart towards people, or how does my heart not get really hard?
Yeah. Well,
And towards not letting any new people in for the fear of that they just might be a seasonal person.
it's hard. I don't think that there's a great answer for it. I think to love is to hurt, and to love is to lose. And I just think it is. I think that is part and parcel with loving people.
Yeah.
It's always going to happen. I remember my wife one time was just struggling with just this whole idea, of even getting close to people. So there's one thing about loving people. There's another thing when you get close to people and then they leave. And just kind of, what it naturally does in us, and we're wired for self-preservation, is that we're going to put up walls and barriers, and we're not going to allow ourselves to get close to people.
Really loud.
Some people leave loudly.
You better
yes.
preach that.
And-
say that
and-
for the people
Some
in the
people
back.
say things when they leave that they never said to you.
Oh yeah, and one
that's
of
that's really hurtful.
It is, and you're gonna have to process that pain no matter what. And I think as a Christ follower, that's where we're called to forgive, and we're called so much to bless those who become your enemies, and to pray for those who persecute. So to me, that's a whole nother piece. Everybody has to walk through that. But I'll just say this: that one time we were with an organization that had taken some pastors on a trip. And one of the guys he pastored a very, very large church in Phoenix, Arizona. My wife was talking to her. She was in a little group with her, and that question was brought up: how do I handle people that were in my life, friends that are now gone, and not wanting to allow myself that. And she just said that the pastor's wife said something that just was really profound to her. She said, sometimes God needs to move some people out of your life to make room for new people.
Yeah.
And when you can have that perspective that, hey, there are some people, and again, it doesn't mean to hold people too lightly, because there's a level of not holding on to people so tightly that they become your savior.
Yeah.
And I think that's what we do as pastors, because if I don't have them, I don't have the
It ain't
money,
gonna
I
work.
don't have this
Yeah.
and this.
Yep.
But I think there's a level of understanding that, like what you said, is that it can be seasonal, and that there are some people that maybe for God to create room in your heart and your life for another friend down the road, or somebody else that's going to pour into your life, might have to move out. There's going to have to be some space cleared out for that to happen. So that kind of framework can change your
I
mind.
also think too, like, one thing that's helpful
Do you mind speaking up?
is, hey, you know what?
I'm just kidding.
Need to throw
my last little thought. I'm here to listen today.
Yeah.
But I think one thing that is helpful,
I just love it.
when you look at relationships, that can be a helpful framework, is when you look at the relationships in your life through the view of stewardship. Because when you look at relationships through the view of stewardship, you're only responsible to steward for however much you're entrusted in that season. And then when they leave, your only stewardship is how you respond
When they leave.
when they leave, or when they're in your life. I mean, I'm not a parent, but I can only imagine a parent knows one day they're probably going to leave the house. So children
do.
aren't a possession. They're a stewardship. People in the church, in your life, friendships. And that way you don't also have, I think you cause a lot of harm when you have a very binary view of relationships. Like, they're either with me super close or I shut them out. No, you may just need to steward them in a different distance or a different proximity or a different place in your heart. And I just want to say this, if anybody listening online can actually hear me, because I just think you're so inspiring. And I think there's so many people listening that probably are thinking, man, I want to do something special. I want to start something new. And so I always like to think of, for me, kind of the cream that has risen to the top in this conversation. Number one is that anything meaningful will involve risk and sacrifice.
Yep.
If there's no risk, there's no meaning. If there's no sacrifice, there's no meaning. Number two is that the greatest wealth in life is relationship. The greatest wealth and the greatest resource is relationship. Number three, even though quote unquote self-promotion feels really icky, if you believe in something enough, you will ask people to invest in something. You will ask people to invest in something that can change their life and yours and the world. And then number four, I just want to say this because, not to get all spiritual, but I want to rally around a point you said yesterday, that for every dream God gives you, it's attached to a journey. And, you know, in the spiritual framework, we could preach about Joseph given a dream as a teenager. And then he went through pits and prisons, and 19 years later, Moses went. But you didn't mention this yesterday or even today, but God gave you a dream for this church in 2015. But not only that, I remember in 2016 when you thought you were going to do it then.
Come on.
And
I forgot about that conversation.
Yeah. And so how many times do we think when God gives us something, we know the time, or even if you're not a Christian, man, I have a dream in my heart, and here's how it's going to happen. Here's when it's going to happen. Here's what it's going to look like. One of my heroes, John Mark Comer, says that from the time of a dream given to the time when it's completed, it's always going to be four things. It's going to look harder, longer, different, and better. It's going to be longer usually to get there, harder to get there. It's going to look different. But in the end, if you stick it out, you work hard, you build team, you trust God, whatever your faith work, it will look more beautiful and it'll look better. And your journey looked nothing like what it would look like from the time in 2015 you had the idea to the time in 2016 when you thought, I'm getting ready to get this. But in between, I'm getting ready to do this, was Austin and Oklahoma and another place in Augusta, Georgia. But you probably wouldn't now trade any of that. What you thought was pain was just preparation to get you ready, your heart ready to sustain the beauty of what God had given you.
That's right. Yeah. That's good.
Well said, even if I couldn't understand it. No, I'm just kidding. That was great.
Joel, how can people find you? How can people follow your journey?
They can find me, several different ways, but Joel Romere, Joel, Romirre, and probably a mouthful. Joel Romirre, and it's not many out there, so I'll probably be the first one pops up. And you got thecorechurch.com, THECOR church.com. No E, come on, somebody.
What if they
no
want to
E.
invest?
They want to invest, they can go to thecorechurch.com as well and click give. And we also got a button that says Core Church Relaunch, and that allows you to watch a video of my beautiful wife and I talk about our heart for the city of Lawrenceville and where we're going. Cool.
I love it. Let's wrap this episode up. Thank you so much for consuming this podcast, this conversation. We love our podcast family. So as always, you can email us questions or feedback. We love connecting with you. You can email us at podcast@thex.church. You can leave a review on one of our platforms. You can like and share this conversation. We're so thankful for you, and we hope that this filled your sails today. And we'll connect with you back on a part 2. Thank you all so much.